So here we are, our five players in the posse of the Deadlands slash Call of Cthulhu game. Vance, since you're to my top left, I'll let you tell the story from your character's point of view, introduce yourself, and tell anybody and everybody whatever you want them to know, what you found to be interesting, what's stood out in your mind, that sort of thing.
Vance Durango, gunslinger. I've been in this part of Kansas for the last 17 years. We were all playing cards one night when a shrill screech came across the town, followed by, if I remember correctly, weren't there some bells? Maybe it was just the screech and a holler. Well, that all got our attention because, frankly, we weren't doing much in cards. And Dr. Trout wanted to run off to check it out. I figured, well, let's go ahead and do that. So I think we all decided to hustle on over there. And sure enough, there we found someone carved up and a hysterical whore. I went up with the doctor into the room. It was a horrible sight. Man had been slashed down to the quick. Real big cuts, but clean through, like slicing through bone. Must have taken a powerful knife and a powerful strength to do such a thing. Looking over the room with the doc, we made some observations. Some strange powder on a windowsill. It looks like whoever the killer was went out the window and left some residue behind. We called down to Barnett and told him to check out in that back alley. I think he and Graff went out there. Maybe it was he and Larrabee. I don't remember which. Sheriff showed up. Told the sheriff what was going on. Said it looked like he went out the window. Sheriff saw some people out the window and immediately got suspicious. We had to assure him those were our people. And then the doctor and I, we we're going to take the guy back when we were told that the desert flower had started to have trouble breathing. So the doctor said, let's get her back quick. So we hustled her back and we tried everything we could, but she didn't make it. About that time, everybody else showed up. That's when the weird stuff happened. I didn't see the weird stuff because I mistakenly decided to help the good doctor. When he dropped something under the table, I went for it. That's when Mr. Barnett and Mr. Graff just started shooting the woman up and talking about some sort of snake thing coming out of her. I didn't see it. They claim they saw it, so did the doctor. From just that night alone, definitely some weird things going on in this town. I figure I'll let somebody else pick it up from there.
All right. Thank you very much, Vance. Christopher, why don't you pick it up? Introduce yourself while you're there, and if you have any stuff you want to fill in up to the handoff, fine. Otherwise, you can pick it up where Vance left off.
My name is Christopher Barnett. I am a former soldier of the Union Army, sharpshooter. Decided to leave the Army after the horrors of Gettysburg. Meandered on home, but the nightmares that I had kept me wandering. So I ended up wandering down, hunting bounties, made for a pretty good living. Eventually, my travels took me to Kansas, where I met up with these fine gentlemen when I turned in a bounty. We got to playing cards, and then, as Vance mentioned, one night, heard a horrible scream And I think he's done a pretty good job of describing what's happened. From my perspective, since the room was full and I've seen my share of death, went out to see if I could find where this mysterious assassin went to. Oddly enough, there were hoof prints in the back alley, not something you would expect in a small town like this. Why someone would keep a horse unless it was for a quick getaway. The initial track took me to up by Boot Hill, where we talked to the groundskeeper there, who had said he had seen a large man on a large horse galloping away out into the wilds around the time after the scream. Since it was night, wouldn't be practical to keep following the track, so we ended up back at the doctor's, where unfortunately the young lady had passed away. Oddly enough, the doctor, as he was doing his examination of her, yelled out and something had bit him, and as we turned around, this is where things started to get a little strange. As a large snake-like thing heaved through her chest and made eyes to attacking our fine companion, the doctor. Well, I couldn't let that stand, so I drew and then loaded into it and sent it on to its next place, and gave me the willies when it dissolved into a black pool of liquid like it had never existed. Next morning, we picked up the trail, rode up to the little town of Work, and that's where we are right now.
So I'm Dr. Gabriel Trout. I'm from St. Louis. I wasn't in Gettysburg, but I was in Antietam and Vicksburg, the siege of Vicksburg. When my family died, when my wife and my children died, I started to travel in the West, looking for somebody. I've settled here for a few weeks. I'm taking over for the local doctor for a few weeks, and all of a sudden this unpleasantness began. Fortunately, I have some friends. When the thing came out of the prostitute's chest or stomach, thoracic region, my response was to do something along the lines of this. And fortunately, my friends were a little quicker on the uptake. By the time I blinked, the thing had been shot many times and died. So that was good. So we joined the posse in the morning to seek out this Black Rider. Christopher, you were the one tracking the trail.
Right, so
this town of Work, where there's where pretty much everyone in the town's been killed. We know there's a few homesteads around with the lights on and people living there. But anyway, we're on our way, except for this problem with the circle. We'd be on our way out to go try to track down the Black Rider. And that's my story.
All right, I guess. My name's Walter Larrabee of the Baltimore Larrabees. They are a very notable, wealthy family in Baltimore. Old money. I, however, am estranged from most of my family. And I am a reporter, depending on your perspective, especially if I have reported about you. Some might call me a muckraker. I have some skill in that. I'm also of the loquacious type. I'm not really a gunfighter. As I said, I'm a reporter, but I have a innate sense of curiosity, and we do live in strange times. And I write a lot of stories that I have some renown as a reporter. I've made some enemies, particularly those who are corrupt and in positions of power. That's where I like to expose corruptness and falseness and lies and distrust. And but I do trust the gentleman I'm with. I met playing cards. I've been in Kansas for about 3 years now. I work out of locally for the most part, and I was not very party to the death of the man, the horrific death, as well as the subsequent death of the prostitute, and what came out of her. Like Dr. Trout, I was pretty much lighting my cigarette when all of that went down. As I said, I'm more of a speaker than a fighter, but I did go with the posse, and I should point out that there are actually kind of two posses. We were with the sheriff, and when my excellent tracker and moon shooter, Chris, that's what I call him, moon shooter, Christopher Barnett, tracked the killer into work, we went in. I'm writing a really good story about what happened there, and as Dr. Trout said, everybody in every building except for the unoccupied post office was dead rather horrifically. And one thing I don't think my compatriots have really touched on much is that they were pretty much all died horrifically, and many were missing major.
Walt, just to when you got into work.
Just until we got into work. Thank you, Marshall. We got into work. It became very clear very quickly that things were very badly out of sorts. And I'll leave it to my comrade Gustav to tell his story.
All right, all. My name is Gustav Graf. So I'm originally come from by way of Massachusetts. So I'm one of 3 children. I have 2 older sisters. A second-generation Dutch immigrant. My parents owned a textile factory up in the Northeast. Did very well for themselves. Didn't speak too much Dutch at home because they wanted us to be American kids. Gave us every opportunity. Spent lots of money on us, put us in a good school. And of course, I drank and whored and cheated my way through college. Did not ingratiate myself, and I was unceremoniously expelled. So my parents gave me an ultimatum. I could either get a job and make something respectable of myself, or I could join the army. So naturally, I hopped the next train out west in the middle of the night, and haven't seen my family since. It's been about 15 years. Fell in with a bad crowd, hung out with some gypsy hucksters who were lying and selling snake oil their way through the West, and took interest in their ways. Never stayed in one place too long because they tend to burn bridges. They're like not, you try to cheat someone more than once, and they tend to come after you with something pointy. So I floated around the West for several years. Now, one of them one night showed me something that scared me. Now, I haven't shared this with the rest of the group. This is just for the narrator to know, really. So they showed me some card tricks that were more than just tricks. They showed me something where it was some kind of deal with the devil, but something backfired, and my gypsy friend was killed. So I was terrified, and I broke with the group. And ever since, I've been drifting on my own. Now, Kansas being a mostly central location, I've drifted back to this town several times, and my friends here, they know me, but they don't know that much about me because I haven't been particularly forthcoming. Now, ever since my friend was killed in the sort of magic wielding accident, I've had nightmares. I've had night terrors, you might call them, where I feel a push and a pull, where I'm terrified to go to sleep because I don't want to see these things that I see, the dead rising, flesh being torn from the skin, demons, ghost rock, smoke, and speech languages I don't understand. But at the same time, I feel drawn to it. So when our fair prostitute was killed, I saw not just a woman die, but I saw signs of something that both terrified me, but also compelled me to go on. Now, maybe some of them are more interested in solving a mystery, but I'm a little more interested in the magic that I see. And I know there's danger, and I know it may kill me, but I can't help but be drawn to it. And so my motives may not particularly be as pure as the rest. Now, once we end up in work, now my nightmares are starting to get really intense. and I feel that we're getting closer to the source of the disturbance, and it feel like it's reaching a boiling point.
Now I got a couple questions for y'all. So, and you can choose to answer or not answer as you so befit. Gustav, have you noticed at one point in time, not too long ago, that those terrible nightmares went away for a while? Do you recall the circumstances behind that?
Not particularly, other than lots of alcohol, and I guess the further east I stayed, the less nightmares I had. The further west I go, the more intense they became. I never quite figured it out.
And let's see here, Walt. Now, you've noticed, of course, being in a, perhaps we call it a two-bit town of Coldwater, tracking down the most heavy of political outrage, is you're finding that a wee bit more difficult. What do you think brought you to Coldwater?
Well, things have been kind of slow, and I was seeking out a two-bit town. It's basically kind of a break. I'm working. This is going to sound trite, but I'm thinking about working on a novel of some of the things I've seen, and I've met a few of my colleagues who I particularly like. So I came to Coldwater to kind of take a break and kind of lie low, so to speak, from this political outrage, because I've made some pretty powerful enemies, and I figure they're less likely to find me in a two-bit town than a bigger city. That's kind of what brought me here.
Fair enough. Dr. Trout, you had a recently somewhat disturbing chunk of news from back east. Relative passing on. Do you have any particular comments on that?
Well, my uncle, he was an odd bird, and he kind of an eccentric, but he came from some money. He sent me a letter and said, anyway, there's a lot of details to it, but he sent me a lot of things. He sent me quite a lot of money, and purchased that bank for me to use to store his possessions. The oddest thing was when he sent the letter saying, "Well, if you got this, I'm dead." Then he said, "But I'll be in touch," which, I would have said, in 1862, I would have said that, I'll see him in the next life. But unfortunately, since the things that happened since Gettysburg, I don't know if he's coming back or not, which is a little bit unnerving. Could just be me misreading the letter, but it's clear that he was dabbling in some occult things, and I'm kind of a little bit afraid of what's going to arrive on the train. The things I'm supposed to store in the bank.
Fair enough. Vance, now your occupation is based largely on your speed and a certain amount of renown, I suppose. You have generated some well, let's just say some people in your past are probably not very pleased with you. Would you care to comment at all on the nature of those people?
I've made some enemies. It was mostly because of my mentor. I originally hailed from the Colorado territories. Got in a little bit of a scuffle up that way with the cattle baron's boys. And I defended my family's honor and killed them. And he had some friends in high places that they wanted me. My family asked me to go back east, but instead I went a little bit south. Well, he had hired some bounty hunters or some desperados to track me down, and came across them in I believe it was in San Francisco. They died. I didn't. I'm not taking credit for them because they pulled inside of a bar, and well, they got gunned down. But I had also drawn at that point and put one of them down before the other even got his gun out. And after that, that's when my elder showed up. My mentor showed up. He was a one-armed gunslinger, ex-gunslinger, Ed Sloan. And he took me under his wing and taught me more and more. We traveled together all throughout New Mexico and parts. And he had convinced me to ride into to New Mexico and to challenge an old gunfighter who accepted my challenge. And I dropped him dead. Well, the problem was he had sons. One of them was some sort of politician. And he decided that it was time for some payback after I killed his younger brother. Well, I didn't kill his younger brother. His younger brother challenged me, and I accepted, and I figured I was just going to wing him. I almost tore his arm off with the shot. The problem was he had a young son that was there with him who was not part of the gunfight. And I dropped that boy dead because he disrespected the code of the gunfight. That got his uncle after me. I believe his uncle went and killed my sister and her family outside of Wichita. I went to Wichita, talked to the sheriff there, and he set me on 7 men that were responsible. I tracked every one of those 7 desperados down and tried to get them to get a confession from them of who actually hired them. Not one of them boys ever relented. So I don't have any proof that it was that statesman brother that killed my sister. But I believe it's that way. Since then, I've just been hanging out in Kansas ever since. And I've been in this small town for the last 2.5 years because no one comes looking for you in a small town.
Sure enough.
One thing I think we all forgot to touch on is we're still kind of in contract with Al, who owns the bar and whorehouse where this young lady was killed. We're supposed to ride into another mine in town and take a look at this mine.
Mr. Swearingen.
True enough. Mr. Swearinger did hire y'all to check out the town of Etna.
So we got to wrap up around here and get on.
Indeed, not so much the town itself, although I'm sure that will be part of information that he'll want back. But a mine, which you have the location of, that is just outside of Etna. And pending y'all's information back, you stand to receive a fairly decent secondary payment and potentially further opportunities. So that's something to look forward to. Now, Charles, you told us a little earlier about the horrors of Gettysburg. And your want to leave the Army at that point in time. what do you think that battle has done to you insofar as what you saw there versus the very recent things you've seen in Coldwater and nearby regions?
What I saw in Gettysburg was just totally unnatural. Men shot, dismembered, still rising up as if they were still alive after they were very much dead. It kind of still gives me the willies at night. And the difference here is that this seems to be more of a harvest. At least to this point, dead stayed dead. So that's the major difference. Now, what is going on in this town, I don't know. Is it ritualistic? Is it otherworldly? I would say so. This is not of this world, and makes me shake my head and just trust in myself and my friends.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it at that, and I'm going to put a pause on